Okay, this is the BH2005 comparator gauge by Blademaster. It's used to transfer the position of the disc, the bulge, to where the disc is. So you can align your holder to the disc. The way you do that is you go through and dress this wheel with the diamond. And I'm not going to turn the machine on, but got the machine on here. And you move the diamond forward and you're going to dress this. This cuts the radius of hollow on the wheel. And I'm going to take the diamond off just for clarity here, the whole assembly. Push this back. So the little wheels on here like this, since I've already cut this to a 3/8 inch radius of hollow, I'm going to put that wheel onto here. Then I'm going to center the dial. So I'm going to zoom in here real quick and show you that. Okay, these little wheels are ball bearings. What you do is you scoot this up close to the disc, and I'll lift this up and down and get it to center. And I'll lock down the magnetic chuck. And I'm going to show you another view here in a second. So again, what I did here, this is a magnetic chuck. Got your table clean. I'm going to move over, move this up and down to those two rollers. There's a roller on the top and the bottom, center on the bulge. So you've got these look like they're about roughly 10 millimeters, say 3/8 inch in diameter. This has got a diameter of say 3/4 because it's a 3/8 inch radius. So you center this back and forth on here. Hold this, lock this down. So I've got that wrong there. I've got to go through and add a little bit more pressure. And maybe go look from the side. There, I got it. So I've got this in the center of the wheel, got this centered, and if I look up top here, I can center this on 0 on the gauge. Again, I'm going to move this up here in the center. I'm going to move this up and down till it centers the two rollers on the radius of hollow. And I'm going to go ahead and set this to be on 0, like that. So this gauge is calibrated to the radius of hollow that's cut. Now I can unclutch this, move it around, and touch it over here on the blade. So I can go over here like this, try to make sure I've got this whole piece on the table, the skate holder. Move this up and down and center it on the blade. I'm going to lock this down. And then kind of move the holder in like this. And then I can go ahead and adjust my holder so that reads 0. Like that. And that's for the one edge. Then I can go over here and do the other edge. Lift this up and down, and then adjust the holder till it matches. So what I'm doing, this holder is actually really too big for this table almost. I'm going through and finding the center of the bulge with these rollers here. This moves up and down. It has an indicator. So once this is centered on here, I set the indicator to be 0. So this will float back and forth. You know, when this is in the center of the bulge here, you center this on 0, and it's a transfer device. So you're transferring that over to the skate edge. And this particular holder here, let me zoom back here. This holder here has got, it's a self-centering. This is SH5000. It's been discontinued, but these two will flex, bend in. So when you got a blade in there, this will lift up the same amount as you've gone down. So if you go from a 3mm blade to a 3.2 or 2.8, once this is adjusted in, you don't have to goof around to adjust it. Pretty much on the money. And then these are the classical controls here to lift this up and down. So if I turn this knob here, it's going ahead and taking this edge of the blade down. If I take the one on the left here, it moves this blade up and down, this edge of the blade. So once you transfer the transfer device here to this edge, centered on 0, and you go over here and centered on 0, pretty much, unless the blade is warped, you've transferred the disc over here to the transfer device, which is the rollers, and that has transferred that height to here and here. Now if you don't have one of those, it's kind of an expensive gizmo, you can just go ahead and touch this over here like this and to see if it's centered, and then lift this up too. I think that's what the Blademaster older video from over a dozen years ago says. Touch this over, adjust this, touch this over, and adjust this. Again, this is the SH5000, which has got these actually bend through here. Kind of a interesting gizmo. So you can unclutch this and put the blade in and then flop this back through. So the blade skate goes in and then over. You undo this and click this in, so this will be inside of here, so this will pivot down. And then you go back and forth, of course. This is a really huge skate holder. It's been discontinued. But these are the classical cam types here to lift either this edge up or this edge up on the skate blade. I kind of like these versus sometimes the three wheels. We got more control because you can lift this edge, and do a tilt. But you got an extra degree of freedom. It's easier to get goofed up, so sometimes I like the older style, which just got 2 degrees of freedom, which is a lift up and lift down. The way these work, there's a cam on here, and there's a little bit of tension on here, so this can slide and not be slipped down. If you've got these two loose, when you're cutting, you can have this thing droop down. So if this is all adjusted in with these Blademasters, you can take these off and hide them, so somebody's less apt to screw it, mess it, goof it up, whatever you want to say. If you're the only user, then that's fine. But these are replaceable. They're made for a lot of the older units, which go back probably several decades on there. Again, this is a self-centering clamp, and it's got kind of a interesting place that stores the tool. So this is the adjustment tool, and it hides under there. The SH5000, excuse me. This is an old CCM blade, ProLite 2. It's got the hex screws that screw on here, right this. And I hadn't put a video out in a while, so I decided I'd just show this because I was goofing this around. This comparator gizmo, you may notice I was kind of fumbling around. What you want to be able to do is, oops, you want to be able to put this on and see if it reads 0 up here from your last, when you did it, and then go back and forth. It needs to be fairly repeatable on there. So again, this is the bulge, determines the radius of hollow, and this is a transfer device. So these rollers, this lifts up and down through here and turns the indicator. So you center this on the bulge. So you've got this gizmo centered here. Lift this up and down to center the rollers. This is a magnetic chuck, so you'll go ahead and lock this down when it's centered. If you're not up against this, there's no way to center it, so you have to kind of, takes a little bit of playing around. You can go through and move this up and down like this, lock it down, and you center this in. That's all kind of just relative. So now I've undone that. So where this lifts up, it reads 0 right here. That's where this roller, the top and the bottom roller, have touched. One roller's touching the top and one's the bottom here. So that's, again, I like to repeat myself, that's why the radius of curvature on this, you need to put a tight, a 3/8 inch, either with a diamond or you can use it with one of the dressing rolls. But if you use a dressing roll device, which is another gizmo, you've got to have it centered. The dressing roll gizmo, it can be moved up and down. So that's even a third thing. Let me get one of those. Dressing roll, you don't use the diamond, and so what it does, you got this big deal here, and excuse me, I'm hurtling over, whoops, some crazy stuff that's over here. This is the dressing roll. Oh, well, we might just leave all that stuff in there. This cuts the radius of hollow. This one says it's a 3/4 inches, kind of a fairly used one. This is the spindle bearing. Goes on here. You go here and kiss the wheel, and that does the radius of hollow. So if you use one of these, it may or may not be adjusted to the pivot on the diamond. So these actually have an adjustment to where, this is an older model, it's got a screw thread on here that lifts this up. You have to undo this, you rotate this around, and it'll lift the wheel up or down. So if it's off some, you might have it, if you use this device here and then you go back to the diamond cutter, they can be off. So if you hooked up your holder to one of these and then you go over and use the holder, you got to be aware of what you dress the wheel with. One of these tends to make the wheel, dresses it a little bit more nicely than the diamond. People tend to like to use these for figure skates and stuff. So it's got a lockable magnetic lock here. And then you turn this and you can go kiss the wheel and then come back. So this dresses the wheel. It's basically a giant spinner, and that's what Blademaster uses. This is pretty big. I mean, it's about the size of a hockey puck diameter. Let's see how big this sucker is here. Woo. Yep, about 3 inches. So the newer version of this, there's a hex screw here that lifts up and down, and the whole thing you move up and down. This one, the older version, you turn this, rotate this around, that lifts the spindle up and down. So this is an aftermarket one. So you go through, put this on, this is the radius of curvature, kiss the wheel, and there you go on that. So if this is not calibrated the same as where the pivot point is over here for the diamond, then you got to go ahead and redo your holders over here. So that's why this transfer device over here is sometimes used in a bigger shop where you want to set everything to where you're not goofing around messing with holders all the time. So you could get your dresser aligned to the diamond pivot over here. So when you rotate the diamond around here to cut the radius of hollow, it's about the holes over here. It's where it pivots on. So this thing, you can actually set this up to run like on a Wasota, which is slightly a little bit higher than I think on the Blademaster, maybe. Just a tad, either higher or lower. But you can adjust this a good bit. And that's about it. Exciting stuff. Blademaster's instructions. Dress a stone wheel to 3/8 inch radius of hollow. Clear the bottom of any debris. Put the bearing seat in the face of the grind wheel. Read the gauge and loosen the small bezel adjusting screw to rotate the glass face. Retighten the bezel clamp. So that's over here. And what I was trying to show here is the little bearing here. The top and the bottom you sign to the grind wheel. So if the grind wheel is not, if you dress this to say a 5/8 radius of hollow, then you've got a bigger uncertainty of this gizmo. So that's why you want to do this to about 3/8, maybe even a quarter if you can do that. Because it makes the predictability where this touches the disc much better. So if this was flat, it's probably going to adjust the top and bottom edge of the thing if you had a giant radius of hollow of a mile or something, kilometer. So here's the magnetic piece. There's the indicator. And then over here, using this, shows that once you've adjusted to the wheel, you go ahead and move this to the holder. And then you're going to adjust the holder so it matches this, where the rollers are. So once you've grabbed the skate blade here, it's probably not going to read 0 on this gauge. So then you go ahead and move the knobs on the holder to force this to be 0. And you do it at the left edge, then the right edge. You may go back and check the left edge. I know it's probably almost no iteration, but there could be some. Now if you got a bent blade, then you got a big issue because you're going to end up creating another issue. There we go. Got the self-centering clamp, SH5000 CCM blade here. Got the form roll piece. That's the older version. Clamp that down. You can see how that moves. So that allows you, when this clamped down to the thing, you can go up, turn this over, just touch the wheel to get the radius of hollow on there and spin it back. This will spin up. Well, that'll last forever. I think it'll do like about 500 pairs of skates. That's kind of all subjective. That's one of these, how good is good. They tend to little bit chatter. This is one that's fairly well worn. And then this pixie dust on there is the same stuff that's on all the other types, like the Blackstone's got a small spinner, 2 different size spinners, and the same pixie dust is on the Pro Sharp wheels, which has got a positive radius of curvature, because that's what's actually cutting the skate, and also on the Sparks machine with the little bitty one. So this little abrasive dust stuff is on a whole bunch of skating stuff. You can see that magnetic mounts on there. Now, what's interesting is some of this used stuff. I had one of these that wouldn't grip, and it turned out they had a piece of foam, felt on here that was like way too thick. So I started to play with the magnet, figuring it had been dropped. There's nothing wrong. They just had a pad on the bottom that was just incredibly thick. So I just put a smaller pad on it and just gripped like mad. But it would be to where you put the magnet on and it would just, you could just push it with your little finger. I said, well, maybe the magnet's been demagnetized. It's just a thicker pad. And then this one that I bought used, Comparator, I had to goof around. I think I had to put a new indicator on this. The indicator was goobered up. So I believe I got a new indicator for this, and it's kind of been a little bit muffed up. I don't know if somebody else uses this on a different machine. It's got a different Z height. There's the rollers. So that's just going in and pushing on the rod here for the indicator. That's an 8. This is an 850. A Blademaster on this unit here, I believe the master unit is all the same, and then they have a different model number, like a 750, 850, and a 950. That's generally just what the holder is that came with the unit, the base holder. These are pretty good units. They've been around for a long time. This one's from 1989. So one thing you have to do down here is sometimes you have to use some, what, I think it's like 4,000, 3,000 grit to kind of get some of the surface rust off. It's got a nice finish to it.